When Peter speeds up his car late in the night when he is sure the whole world is sleeping, he is not thinking. He is afraid, sure, but that doesn't mean he has the courage to stop now. So he speeds up the car and hears the siren behind him and stops only when his car swivels and hits a tree. There's a loud ringing in his ears, but he is unable to move at all. He is sure death is finally coming his way. But does it come? Of course not, because then none of us would be reading this. Now, anyone who has ever been in Peter's position must have come to deal with the theories of the fruitlessness of life and the utter meaninglessness behind it. Surely the thoughts must have led to some really dark places, and while I can neither condone nor condemn such acts, I must say that Peter's situation has led me to question something. What gives our lives value? While I cannot comment on someone else's life, I must say that in Peter's case, it's probably his misplaced values and lack of love from his family and friends. He bet in all the wrong places and decided that was it for him. When Peter first imagined himself in this position, he imagined it to be a dreadful decision. Sure, he knew it was going to hurt, but he was also pretty sure that it wouldn't be as hurtful as his current, life. He planned all of this a couple of weeks ago and was waiting for the first thing to throw him over the edge. This morning, Dexter, his brooding neighbor, informed him of a recent tragedy that struck a family in some other state. And although Peter remembers that he was shocked by the utter crassness with how the state dealt with the situation, his entire attention was on Dexter, and for good reason, if I am getting it right. See, Dexter's been his neighbor for 2 years now. He is handsome, smart, silent most of the time, and incredibly charming. So when Peter looked at him, he couldn't help but think how brave it was of him to get over his mom's death. Peter knew Dexter and his mom were close to each other, so it took him by surprise when one morning Dexter dropped a couple of sunflowers on his window, because Dexter owns a flower shop, and told him that his mom wouldn't want him to grieve over her all his life. And, looking at him, Peter knew that his family, who cares not at all for him, would get over his death quickly too. In fact, they may not even mourn. He was that sure. So, he had no burden, a fact that I should not comment on. So he drove his speeding car into a tree the same night, and now, weeks later, he is in the hospital bed, definitely not dead, and in a coma of all things. His leg bones are shattered, so we at least know he is not going to make an attempt at suicide again when he wakes up. If he wakes up, that is. Let's put all the possibilities on the table. His grandmother, a woman called Sammie, is one of the 2 people who often visit him. The other one is, if you guessed it, Dexter. That poor soul probably considers it his fault that he did not see this coming, the same way he did not see his mom killing herself on his birthday. And oh, how can I forget myself? For I am always present when it comes to Peter. Who am I? I don't know. I may only be the narrator of this story and nothing special. I will state things just as I notice them, whether they happen in Peter's body or someone else's. 4 weeks after the incident, Sammie comes to visit Peter with Dexter in tow. Peter is still unconscious, and so far he has only shown a few signs of awareness, but Sammie does not stop at the little couch in the corner. She walks up to Peter's bed, sweeps a hand over his forehead, and carefully puts a little sachet under his pillow. It jostles him only slightly, and Dexter immediately rushes in to check. "Is everything all right, Sammie?" he asks. Sammie nods at him. "It's fine." Her hand trembles when she places a kiss on Peter's forehead. "I wish I had seen this coming, but I'm glad someone's watching him now." Is she talking about us? Me? Dexter rightfully looks confused. Sammie shakes her head at him and turns to Peter. "You'll find what you are looking for, sweetheart, for this sachet will provide you with all the ways you can gain what you feel you lack the most in your life, and in the most adventurous ways." She is whispering. She definitely does not want Dexter to know what's going on. Considering what she is talking about, I know the very reason too. The family's heirloom is a sachet that is passed on to the next generation and to the most desperate member of the family, usually someone who needs saving. This sachet holds a special power, one that allows the latest owner's consciousness to travel in someone else's body for a specific amount of time. Before Sammie, it was owned by her mother. Before her mother, it was owned by Sammie's great uncle, and so on and so forth. Now, generations later, It has come to Peter. For now is Peter's chance at life, the second chance. You can put those flowers in the vase, son. Was it you who bought it? It's beautiful, Dexter replies and puts the sunflowers in the vase. Peter loves sunflowers, Sammie notes with interest. How did you know? Well, being neighbors for 2 years has its perks, Dexter smiles at her and returns to his seat. I have learned quite a few things about Peter, his favorite flower being one of them. I'm sorry I'm bothering you, Sammie tells him. I hope it does not hurt your job. Dexter shakes his head at her. I've asked a colleague to take care of the shop. Now, for the next 4 hours, the two will sit here and chat until the visiting hours are over. Over the last few weeks, they have been consistently doing the same. The same cannot be said about Peter's family, though it is true they visit Peter every so often on Sammie's insistence. However, each member represents a trouble that Peter is currently dealing with. Peter's father, however, takes the crown, for he never learned to respect Peter for the human he is. Besides, there's bad blood between all of them. The sachet takes effect immediately for the next time that Peter wakes up. He is not in his body. He does not seem to recognize why his body feels different or why he is feeling a mix of passionate but angry emotions. It is not until his tearful eyes catch the distraught-looking figure of a big man that he understands what situation he is in, even though there shouldn't be any way he should. But we all know it's the sachet. For the wildest second, as the man in front of him screams in utter terror, Peter cannot help but wonder what the hell just happened. But he's in the middle of a situation and is breathing, so he knows he is alive. But how? Have I survived the accident? Where am I then? He wonders to himself. I know I cannot tell him what's happening, so who will tell him? Besides, I do not think it will take him much time to realize his body is not his. I am alive, he mutters to himself, and is a little surprised when his voice comes out and a little high-pitched. The man in front of him growls, Can you stop muttering to yourself? You ruined my life, man. Peter's eyebrows furrow long before understanding takes home in his mind. What are you talking about? He asks and runs his hand over his body. It does not seem like the body of a man. The feeling of absurdity comes late. I cannot, the big man, whose name Peter is not able to say out loud even though it's at the tip of his tongue, exclaims and throws his hands in the air. I just cannot believe that I slept with a man. Then something shatters. The cloud of confusion clears from his head, and he is left with a single thought. I am not in the body of a man, so I am not a man. And even though he does not understand the situation, immense anger takes home in his body, and he clenches his hands. I am not a man. Within seconds, Peter realizes it's not his voice and certainly not his emotions that led him to declare that. The guy, Timothy, snorts like a pig. You should have told me. I tried to tell you last night, but you wouldn't listen. As if that matters now because I slept with you. Screw it, I'm out of here. It's just disgusting. Maybe try to find people like yourself from now on. Timothy rushes out of the home when Peter grabs a lamp and throws it at him. I have to say, I am disappointed it didn't hit him. Peter wipes his tears away and sits down on the bed, only to stare at the mirror for a solid minute before screaming in panic and falling out of the bed in the process. What the hell? Peter exclaims and looks down at himself all over again. I roll my eyes. This guy knew he was feeling weird about his body and only noticed why that was so. Surely he should have figured out that he's no longer in his own body and that it belongs to Suzy, Peter mutters. I'm in Suzy's body? Suzy and Peter belonged to the same dancing institute when Peter was still actively trying to deal with the crisis in his life. He remembers her as Itsuki, a shy Japanese who came here, spent several months dancing, and eventually left. Obviously, there was a little attraction between them, one that resulted in a passionate relationship for a few weeks, only to dissolve into nothing because Itsuki never felt comfortable in his body. After several fights, they ended just as passionately as they had begun. After Itsuki left, they never met again. Peter never saw Itsuki again in person, although He did come across her Instagram profile, surprised to find that she wasn't Itsuki anymore. She now went by the name of Suzy. But why am I like this? Peter wonders and stares at the new face he owns in the mirror. It suddenly makes sense why his anger did not feel like his own, or why he took such great offense to being called a man. As bizarre as the entire situation sounds to him, it came naturally, and probably because he's no longer Peter. He's Suzy now. Hours later, when Peter wakes up, it's late evening. Peter feels more at home in this different body than before. Then the doorbell rings. Peter, now slightly more comfortable in Suzy's body, shivers in worry that the person on the other end will recognize something is wrong with her. But when Peter opens the door, the friends standing on the other end do not find anything amiss. "Suzy!" they exclaim in unison. "How are you?" "It sucks." Peter is surprised at how smoothly and naturally the words and feelings come out of him. Certainly Suzy's consciousness is no longer hers only. Why are all the men trash? Nikki, one of the two friends, loops her arm with Suzy's and drags her inside the home. The other friend, Hanny, locks the door behind them. "It's all right. You'll find an actual good guy someday." Suzy shakes her head. "I am giving up on men." "What?" Hanny asks. "Should I make us some coffee?" Suzy wrinkles her nose in Peter's stead. Peter hates coffee and is wondering how to refuse such an offer. Some problems. I am here wondering how I would be dealing with these two people, and he is wondering how he should refuse coffee. Certainly with Peter's consciousness in Suzy's body now, it is Suzy we are currently dealing with right now. Consequently, I think it is better if I call Suzy by her name until this particular situation is over, however long that takes. "I will skip," Suzy says. "I'm not thirsty or hungry," she adds before her friends can propose some other idea. "But this is not done." "Yes," Nikki exclaims. "You cannot stop eating and drinking over a man." And she wasn't even in a relationship with him, just a one-night stand. "Should we go shopping?" Nikki suggests. "Still bad," Suzy mutters and rolls on the bed. "I will have to go shopping tomorrow. I think that's enough social interaction for me this week." The next day. Obviously, Suzy's life doesn't remain the same the next day. Yesterday, she promised to swear off men for personal reasons, for most of them have treated her the worst, a fact that I can attest to, considering I know all about her history now. But today, during her shopping, she accidentally meets someone she is sure is going to change her life. "They should stop doing that," is the first thing the man says. When Suzy turns to him, he smiles at her and points at the uppermost shelf with a bandaged finger. "They should think about short people too." "Excuse me?" Suzy says, laughing. "I am not short." "Oh, excuse me, miss, while I prove you wrong." The stranger grabs the cornflakes at the topmost shelf and drops the box in Suzy's cart. He smiles at her, probably not noticing the stunned look on her face. "Now is the time you prove me wrong." "You called me miss? You are one." He stops and gives her a once-over. "And a pretty one." "Oh, I see. I am unsure how much Peter understands what is happening right now, but this is romance in the making. Ever wonder how Peter would like to be treated with the same respect and admiration?" Suzy, for her part, swallows and tries in vain to grab another cornflakes box. When she fails, she huffs, turns to the man, then rolls her eyes. "You win." The man smiles and stretches a hand for her to take. "Connor." Suzy takes his hand. "Suzy." "Hi, Suzy. Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too, Connor." An hour later. The world around them is silent, despite it being Sunday. Then again, one spends their Sunday simultaneously recovering from a harrowing week and preparing oneself for another. So, it isn't surprising. Suzy is suddenly grateful for that. This certainly helps her in her knowledge that her heart is being particularly hard after meeting this Connor. This is certainly going to leave a mark on her, I am sure. And I am happy. This may as well be the start of something new and respectful. After all, good relationships are built on mutual respect. "Do you live in town?" Connor asks and hands her an ice cream. Suzy takes it with a grateful smile. "I have lived here for the last 7 years. How come I never noticed you before?" Suzy smiles and fixes her gaze on Connor to gauge his reaction, to notice any slight change in his behavior after realizing that she is a trans woman. Probably because I haven't looked like this in all those 7 years. Instead of giving the typical reactions that Suzy now expects out of men, he smiles in return. And this is one charming smile, I must say. That explains it then. Instead of asking if he's not weirded out by the revelation, she tips her ice cream into his, a move that they both laugh at. Thanks for the ice cream. Connor looks all over her face before giving her another charming smile. Welcome, Suzy. I'm glad to have met you. The next day. I think I am in love, Suzy texts to her friends in the group chat. Nikki is offline, so only Hanny replies. I knew you could not be saved. He is good, Suzy replies. I can feel it. He is respectful, different, and nice. Hanny calls her at that. Okay, explain how he is different. I know it's not something big, but he did not laugh right into my face when I told him that I'm trans, Hanny. He did not look confused even. He was respectful about it. That's great, but that's like the bare minimum. Yes, but Hanny, he is different. I know that. Hanny takes a while to answer. You two are meeting again? Suzy nods her head at first and then realizes that Hanny cannot see it. Tomorrow. Nothing special. In a park. In a park, Hanny. Well, that's delightful. Suzy, I really hope it goes well for you. And if not, Suzy laughs into the phone. Well, I will warn him for you. Good, Hanny replies. The same evening. The evening when Suzy leaves her apartment to shop for something nice for the not date tomorrow, she comes across Connor. Obviously, now that the two have met, how can they not meet each other at every other crossroad? Oh, hey Suzy, Connor calls out and waves a hand until Suzy catches sight of him. Didn't expect to see you here. Suzy smiles at him. Me neither. What are you doing here? Carefully, she hides her shopping bags behind her back as if that can prevent Connor from understanding what it's about. Well, I had an off day today, so I decided to roam around. On a Monday, she exclaims. The whole week's off, actually, he replies and rubs a hand over his nape. What are you doing here? Suzy shrugs. Well, you know, shopping stuff. Connor smiles at her. Well, then I will not bother you with it. See you tomorrow? You can come with me, she suggests and nods at a shop. Help me choose some aesthetics for my home? I've been meaning to do it for a while. Are you sure? Connor asks. If you can come, you are welcome, Connor. Well, that I am, he grins. The next day. Unfortunately, it's a rainy day today. It rained the entire morning and Suzy fears that it will follow well into the evening too. Like a doomed lover, she waits for the inevitable message from Connor about canceling the plan being a better idea than keeping it up with, but receives a message in the late afternoon from Connor asking if she's still up with the plan. Confused but excited, she replies with enthusiasm that she would love to come and see him. Connor is dressed in simple clothes but looks as dashing as she always imagines him to be. Excitedly, she rushes into his arms and they both grin happily. I know parks are like the most boring places in the city, but there are flowers. It's okay, Connor, as long as it's nice. That's true, he sighs, and then doesn't speak anything for a while. Is something wrong? Suzy asks. Connor sucks on his bottom lip and looks at her for a while. A blush has risen to his cheeks, so we know it's nothing bad. It's just that you look very nice today. Pretty. I'm glad I met you. She punches him in the arm and a blush coats her cheeks. You're not too bad yourself, she looks ahead at the park. And I'm glad I met you too. Geez, how many times have they said that to each other by now? 60 times? Do all newly enamored people act this way? Makes one wonder if Peter has ever gone through the same in his life to give up so easily. And that is precisely why I come across one such moment in his life while shuffling through Peter's memories like it's my garden. It is not extraordinary and belongs to a certain someone whom Peter has acknowledged only in passing. It's Dexter, obviously. The next day. Like it happens in a developing romance, Connor invites her to his place the next day. It's nothing special, obviously, he tells her, and then rubs his nape for equal measure. But I was hoping you could see the real me before, like, if, something happens. He cringes and makes a face at her. Instead of harboring the worry that I have at his expression, Suzy smiles at him. It's all right, you don't need to be so nervous. It's just, I really like hanging out with you. I know it's only been a couple days, but it feels right, right? So I want you to see my place because people kind of often distance themselves from me for it. Oh, he was talking about his own insecurities. Why? Unless you murder people and keep them in your home, I really don't think I understand why they would do that. But, of course, I will be there. I can come to pick you up if you want. It's alright, really. I will come. Text me your address when you reach home. Connor nods his head with a smile. That sounds nice. She smiles at him. That does sound right. And that is the reason why she's standing outside Connor's apartment right now, wondering if she should ring the doorbell. In the end, her fear loses the fight, and she brushes her hand once before ringing the doorbell. Connor opens the door a second later, surprising Suzy. What just happened? I was waiting to see if you'll ring the doorbell, Connor explains. Oh, Suzy replies. Thanks for ringing it. Oh, you really wanted me to come. Connor's expression changes slightly and a soft confusion takes its place on his face. Yes, I even cooked us some lunch. I'm not great, but we gotta make do. Suzy laughs at that. It's alright, I can manage that. Thank you for your generosity, ma'am. And Suzy spends her second date with Connor understanding his artist side. Apparently, Connor paints, just like Peter does. So when Connor prompts Suzy to paint, Peter's consciousness takes the opportunity at the right moment, and he, delighted at the situation and with Connor, takes the brush in his hand and sits down to paint. When Connor stands directly behind Suzy to take a look at what's going on, her breath quickens, and Peter suddenly, as if in a quick moment, understands what Suzy feels. Suddenly, he desires and hopes for more, for himself more than anyone else. When the night falls and Suzy returns to her home, Peter desperately hopes to return to his own body so that he can try to stimulate it to feel the same sensations he is currently feeling in Suzy's body. Surely, when things return to normal, he will remember all of this. So when the night falls and Suzy falls asleep, I notice with interest Dexter leaving the hospital premises with a hunch in his shoulders. He had come to visit Peter's comatose body with Sammie in tow, but the visiting time ended hours ago. How come was he still here? Is it the only guilt he feels or something more? I cannot say, for I have greatly missed the situation on the other side. The next day. The forecast says it'll rain the entire week and so warns to be prepared for sudden showers. Obviously, that doesn't mean Suzy and Connor stay at their respective homes and chat online. When the weather rests for a while, both of them find their way out of the house and plan on meeting in a local cafe, the little place they are at right now. Oh, you have told your friends about me? Connor asks and rubs a hand over his nape. All good things, I hope. Suzy laughs at his nervous display. Don't worry, you've been nice to me. Connor relaxes. Thank God, I don't want to mess this up. Suzy swallows around her pastry and speaks when she's done swallowing. Well, thanks for the effort, Connor. I appreciate it. So, what are your plans for today? Suzy shrugs. I've got some work to do, at home and for the office. If I can help in any way, I would love to. Well, remember the stuff we bought? I may need to hang those. Not that I can't do that myself, please note that, but I am giving you an opportunity to prove yourself, you know? And you can be helpful too. She is grinning, so Connor mirrors her expression. Connor raises his hands in surrender. I will never imply that. Good for you. They both smile at each other, and then Connor asks if she'd like some coffee. I think I've had enough of that. I can make some at home if you want. Oh, I'd love that. He gives her a hand and they walk out of the local cafe, hand in hand. I am not an artist, by the way, she tells Connor, so don't expect anything glamorous. Thanks for the warning, Suzy. A few hours later. I think the maroon curtains will suit the balcony more, honestly. It'll help with the heat too, a little, Connor adds with a smile. Suzy nods her head and looks around her home. I think we can do that. And then, Connor says and returns to fixing the curtains, we can deal with those hanging plants. Do you have more? I have older ones. I usually keep them in the kitchen though because the pots are broken and ugly. Connor laughs. We can always buy new ones. Suzy purses her lips and thinks for a while. That's a good idea. All right, that's next then. I will hang these and we can go and shop for some. I will make some coffee for you. Thanks, Connor calls after her. Suzy, blatantly happy now, smiles on her way to the kitchen. If everything goes well, then maybe she can go and tell Connor about her insecurities. Isn't this the right time before they get into a more serious part of the relationship? Not that she hates being in her skin, but she would rather know if Connor likes her for real before placing all her hopes and feelings on him. In the evening, when everything is said and done, Suzy asks Connor if he would like to watch a movie with her. Connor smiles at her and then regretfully informs her that he will go to the station to bring his parents. They're coming to meet me, so I have to go pick them up. They haven't been to a new place. Even though she's slightly disappointed, she smiles at him. That's alright, Connor. Really. Say hello to them. Yeah, Connor stands a while on her threshold and then runs a hand through his hair. Will I see you tomorrow? Of course. Why not? You're not upset? Suzy laughs at that. Why would I be? Oh, nothing, he replies and steps back. I will see you tomorrow then. Bye. Good night, Connor. And although still disappointed, at least she's not upset or sad. The next day, Suzy finally tells Connor about her issues. It's late evening and both of them are huddled on her couch. The movie paused for a moment because this is more important to discuss. For the longest minute after she's done, it's silent. Please say something, she finally begs. It's all right, Suzy, he replies. Thank you for telling me. All right, she replies. I don't know how to explain my attraction to you. I saw you and I liked what I saw. Connor gives such a laugh that Suzy cannot help but laugh along, an extension. Obviously, Peter. It feels like a genuine moment, so much that it reaches both their, Suzy, and Peter's consciousness at the same time. In a way, this moment feels like a win. Nearly a week ago, Suzy was struggling with accepting herself in the face of a transphobe, and here she is finally looking happy. That's the truth, he exclaims next. Please don't laugh at my feelings. You were horny when you first saw me? How am I not supposed to laugh at that? Please, that's not the case at all. Oh, is that it now? She challenges him. Okay, fine, I was sexually attracted, alright? But that was not all. I was attracted to you, and I wanted to get to know you. Thank God for my extroverted self, otherwise I would have chickened out and run away without saying anything. Well, thanks to that then, she mutters. Connor gives her a sweet smile at that. If you give me a chance, Suzy, I really am willing to try this with you. I know it's been a week only, but it's always a week in the beginning. Suzy nods at him. I will always respect you, Suzy, Connor says suddenly. I have, and I will. Suzy softly smiles at him. Well, we can continue watching the movie then. Unless, Connor says and coughs while Suzy finally turns to him. You want to do something else? Something else like, she asks. Kiss me. Or, want me to kiss you? Any will do, Connor smiles at her, and Peter's heart races with the thought that he will finally, after such a long time, will know how it feels to be kissed by someone genuinely attracted to you. Sure, he is not in his body, and the lips aren't his, but he can feel everything Suzy is feeling. Surely he can feel the kiss too. But obviously, if it were that easy, then Sammie wouldn't have bothered with the sachet at all, would she? So, just as Connor leans in to kiss Suzy, and just before their lips touch, Peter is pulled back from her body and slammed right into his own. But, for him, the transition seems to take a while, for he knows that Connor and Suzy are kissing. He knows she is being kissed, but he feels nothing. He notices their entangled limbs, but he does not feel anything, and just like that, he is back in his body. The snap back to reality is so intense and massive that he's in his own body with a gasp. The stench of the hospital room greets him instead of the lavender one in Suzy's home, and when he opens his eyes, he finds Dexter napping on the single sofa in the corner of the room instead of Connor. Slightly disappointed at the sudden change in the situation, he cannot help but feel surprised at the sight of him. Then, something prompts him to do something that he does not understand at all. He stretches out his weakened hand over the bedside table and, with trembling and tired fingers, pushes the bowl off the table. The movement catches Dexter's attention and he wakes up with a jerk in time for the door to slam open and Peter's dad, Arnold, to walk in. Arnold's face twists with something mean, a feeling that I do not like at all. Oh, he's awake. What were you two talking about? Sammie follows after him in the room. The harsh lighting of the hospital room makes it difficult for Peter to figure out the shape and face of the person standing behind both of a man surely, in his late years, but instead of focusing on the strange figure, even though the presence gives Peter creeps for inexplicable reasons, he turns to look at his dad again. "I should call the doctor," Dexter announces in time for Peter to exclaim to his dad's face in a breathy voice. "Fuck you." Arnold's face twists. "What did you say?" "I tried to kill myself for you, but you never learned to respect me. Why are you here anyway?" "Peter," Dexter says, "please don't speak. I have killed myself over and over for you, but you never looked at me with respect." Tears spring out of his eyes. "I do not need it anymore. I am tired of begging you for it. I am tired. Go away. This time, it is me who does not want to see your face again." The last statement, no doubt, arises from the reminder of the last argument between the father-son duo, when Arnold proudly told Peter that he'd rather die in a ditch than respect Peter, even though Peter earned a six-figure salary that he earns all on his own, unlike his sister. "I never wanted to come here anyway. It's all your fault, Mom. Let's go, England." And then Arnold walks out of the room, stomping his foot out of the hallway. Immediately, something shifts in Peter's demeanor. His eyes, which were once confused about the fourth presence in the room, immediately find England, Peter's uncle, standing in the doorway. A beat of silence passes between them, wherein neither of them speaks, a fact that goes unnoticed by both Sammie and Dexter as they fret over Peter. A spike of fear arises in Peter, one that results in elevated heartbeats and rings all sorts of alarms in his room, before England walks away with a little smirk etched on his face. "Peter," Dexter says, and places a hand on his sweaty forehead. "Peter, relax. Are you all right? What's happening?" "Get him out of here," Peter mutters, looking immensely tired all of a sudden. "Get him out." "Who, Peter?" Peter looks at the stunned frames of Sammie and Dexter, and with a sigh, when he notices England's no longer present in the room, drops his head back on the pillow, not at all surprised at how wet the pillow is. The feelings Peter received from his other situation are still fresh in his mind, and when he closes his eyes with a sigh, he returns to his comatose state. And I sit here thinking, watching, as Sammie pushes Dexter out of the room to call for the doctor, about what the hell just happened. Sammie's sachet worked. Peter spent a week in Suzy's mind, falling in love with Connor, and now he has returned to his comatose state? What does that mean? Has Sammie's sachet not worked? What was the deal with his uncle? Or is it that there's more to come? Surely, there are going to be some explanations for this situation. Or was it that Peter's just learning his lesson, and this was the first of many to come? The doctor is in the room with Peter when Sammie and Dexter stand outside of his room, nervously pacing up and down the hallway. "Sorry, Sammie," Dexter mutters tiredly. "I fell asleep." "I don't blame you for that, Dexter. You should take some rest. You have been at this for a while." Sammie pats his shoulder. "Is he going to be all right?" Dexter whispers, "after what just happened?" Sammie nods her head and wrings her hands together. "I think it's working." Hello guys, second part of the story is already up for the members. If you want early access to the next part of the story, consider joining our channel membership today. Stay tuned for the next part of the story coming up next Saturday. What do you think is Peter's purpose now that the sachet is with him? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.